Welcome to the Growth Now movement. I'm your host, Justin Shank. I'm an entrepreneur, speaker, and podcaster who years ago decided to go on a journey on how to grow in all areas of my life. What I found out was it's really a matter of focusing on the 4 pillars of life: business, relationships, spirituality, and wellness. And that's what we do here. We explore how to continuously grow in those areas, all while having a ton of fun doing it. I'm really excited you're on this journey with me. Now let's get to this week's episode. This week, I sit down with Dr. Jeff Spencer. At 7 years old, Dr. Jeff committed to becoming an Olympic cyclist. At 21, he competed in the Olympics. Soon after, he realized that helping exceptional performers tap into their highest potential was as equally satisfying to him as competing and winning himself. Ever since, he's coached top-tier performers into elite performers, people like Tiger Woods, Sir Richard Branson, and so many more, and so many Olympians. And it's absolutely mind-blowing who he's worked with. He's changed their habits, strengthened their minds, and gave them tools to consistently deliver at the height of their game. In this episode, Jeff breaks down some of the tools and tactics he's used to help these individuals so you can start to implement them into your life. And we talk about what it's like to sit down with these individuals and break down their thought processes and take them to that next level. And he also really opens up about his daughter, who he adopted, and it's really, really heartwarming, and you can feel the love and how much he poured into her so she can live her best life here in America. I think you guys are really going to enjoy this episode. I really loved connecting with Dr. Jeff Spencer, and he's somebody that I want to keep close in my circle as he is an amazing human being. Now, before we get to the episode, I want to remind you guys that Growth Now Summit Live is happening because live events are back. So head over to growthnowsummit.com, grab your tickets now. We are still officially an early bird, but the prices are going up soon, right before I announce the next speaker. So you want to go over there and take advantage of this. And while you're there, buy a ticket for a friend too. This event is absolutely life-changing, and I think you guys are going to truly love it. I think the speakers I'm announcing here in the future are absolutely mind-blowing. The speakers I've already announced are life-changing, and I cannot wait to connect with you guys there in person. So head over to growthnowsummit.com, grab your tickets now. Now, without further ado, let's get to the episode with Dr. Jeff Spencer. Jeff, welcome to the show, man.
Well, thanks, Justin. Always a pleasure. Can't wait.
Yeah, we were introduced just recently, and I looked into who you were and what you've done in this world, and it's really mind-blowing, not only your own personal journey, but all the incredible human beings that you've helped with mindset and really achieving that championship mindset. I mean, you're talking people like U2 and Tiger Woods and all these crazy things. Now, we also know this doesn't happen overnight, and I'd love to hear from you what that journey's been like for you. How does somebody get into the position that you're in right now?
Well, it was 3 angels for sure. When I was 7, I wanted to be an Olympian. I thought that'd be cool. I didn't know how I was going to do it. Then I showed some unusual ability on a bicycle at 10. Like there's something very wrong with this guy. He's like got the fitness of a 20-year-old at 10. There was a coach that showed really an interest in me as a human being first and as an athlete second. That was when I was 13. That was the last time I saw my father as well. And my cycling coach was a 3-time Olympian, 5-time national champion. And he said, Jeff, I know you have Olympic aspirations, but it's not just about will and talent and trying harder. He said it's about learning the skill of winning. It's a learned skill. It's deliberate. It's purposeful. And I want you to come to all of my training sessions. And you're not going to do my training. I'm going to tell you what your training is, but I want you to be around the Olympic level conversation starting now. It's not like we'll talk it as a 13-year-old now, and then we'll talk as an Olympian later. We are going to start talking as an Olympian right now. And you're going to be around people that are talking at that level that have that aspiration. So with that, 10 years later, I did become an Olympian. I owe everything to him for that. My second angel was a gentleman, my life mentor that I met when I was 18, and he was 76, kind of an odd pairing there, and a true Renaissance man in every sense of the word. And one of the things that he did, he created a whole new style of art glass sculpture, and he chose me as his apprentice to create his glass masterpieces, which is a very unusual pairing again. Yeah. But he saw something in me, and at the breaks and at lunchtime, he would play classical music. He would read the poets to me. He would read the great classical literature. And he said, I need to fill you up on this stuff, which I had a capacity to absorb, which I did. It seemed like an unlikely attribute for someone that was just athletically minded, but he taught me really about another side of doing life. And then my third angel was a person that helped me in the business cycling world as well. And he was a Frenchman of immense dignity, and I wondered why he carried such dignity and kindness. And I found out later that he was uh, a concentration camp victim in World War II, exposed to the most hideous human cruelty known for half a century, half a decade. And yet he harbored no ill will, nothing but just love and charity and generosity. And he is somebody that I wanted to emulate. And again, he chose me. So those three together allowed me to go to school and get my master's degree in sports science on an educational opportunity grant because I came from a welfare family. They taught me the skill of winning, and they taught me human dignity. And it also showed me the importance of versatility of developing my assets to be the best that I could be.
Yeah.
And so that eventually led to me advising athletes how to win gold medals, which I've helped a bunch of them win gold medals, maybe 40 plus gold medals in the Tour de France, the Olympics, World and National Championships. It allowed me to show my art glass in the best galleries in the United States. It allowed me to be involved in 9 Tour de France's, 8 Tour de France victories, to be backstage with U2 and with them personally. So it gave me an amazing access that allowed me to be able to be the corner man, not just the coach, but the corner man to people that play a high game and those that aspire to. And that's how I got from there to here. And I'm 70 and I'm still in the game. I'm passionate about what I do. My favorite pastime is to help people win and win big. And that's how I got here. And that's why we're talking.
See, that's so much. It's so much to unpack. It's so much that I want to dive into. And, I want to start a thing that you really kind of breezed over quickly. And you said when I was 13 was the last time I saw my father.
Yeah.
What kind of, and I don't know the backstory then, if you're willing to share, I'd love to hear it. And
Sure.
but what kind of impact does that make on a young man's life? Obviously you were lucky enough to have these 3 mentors find you and choose you.
Yeah.
But what kind of impact was that at 13 to be like, okay, I'm not going to see my dad ever again?
Well, he wasn't much of a presence anyhow. Neither was
Mm.
my mom. They weren't malicious and they weren't abusive in any way, shape, or form, but they were like non-entities. So I grew up kind of just assuming, well, I just have to figure this out myself. And luckily I had the self-start gene. So I never knew otherwise. I mean, certainly it's a great loss because I never was able to experience, people cry tears for what they had that they never will have again. I shed tears for what I never had and never will have, from that standpoint. But, the good Lord sent 3 angels to me that did their job well for me. And it's with deep appreciation that my father gave me a chance in this life, in this dimension, and that the 3 angels and the other people have stepped in to cultivate and grow my assets to be a contributor to humanity. And what I learned from my dad as well, which reflects what my cycling coach said. He said that will and talent aren't enough. And my dad was an artistic genius. I mean, literally genius. That's not metaphoric, but
Wow.
his work was surreal. He was extraterrestrial and everybody knew it and he could command the prices for it. But his will and his talent didn't save him. And he died homeless on the streets of New York City. I found out 30 years later. So that was
Mm.
a really important lesson for me is that, when I found out how in where he died and how he was put to rest, I went out on the tip of Long Island to the cemetery where he was buried. I never told anybody the story. You're the first to hear it.
Mm.
That I was shaking when I went out there. It's like I found out where he was buried. So I saw the little plaque that had his name on it. It was a military cemetery, and I looked down. I saw his name and the date of his birth and his passing, and I just looked at it and I said, well, there's nothing more that can be said about this story. I mean, now it's up to me to decide my future, and there's nothing that can be gained further from this. And that was a really important moment for me where I truly understood that at a certain point in time, it's really up to us to find that way to be a manifester of gifts and an impactor of people. And so I feel that, again, a big silver lining to a life tragedy, but every one of us has our own kind of tragedy in our own way that does take us back to that plaque moment where we realize, it is up to us. And that's perhaps one of the most important moments of our entire lives.
Mm. That's so powerful, and when I hear these moments in your life where there's these aha moments, right? And
Yeah.
self-awareness is something that's really, really huge. And I realized, and I was actually talking with a guy named Ed Milet years ago on my podcast, and we talked about having parents like, so you don't know my back. I'm talking like, my backstory. So my mom had battled opioids for 20 years. And there was a moment in my life too, where my dad was in jail. And so
Mm-hmm.
when your parents make these choices, although my parents loved me unconditionally, there's this massive innate sense of self-awareness, like
Very much.
understanding like what's around us, right? Like
Yeah.
what mom's going to show up today, right?
That's
And
exactly right.
and
Yeah.
so how you kind of handle that. And so I imagine that was a catalyst for a lot of what you do now, subconsciously. So let's talk a little bit about, you had also mentioned in the beginning that winning is a choice, right? There are things that we can do to set ourselves up to win. Let's talk a little bit about that, and where you began to learn that kind of technique in your life.
Well, kind of the observation is that I was instinctively helping people uh, tease out their greatness and manifest that. And my definition of a champion is a manifester of gifts, meaning that there's only one of us in all of creation. There's only one Justin, there's only one Jeff, and one of everybody. And that uniquely qualifies us to do some extraordinary things that nobody in this creation can ever do.
Mm.
And I feel that's an important inflection point as relates to this. And so, with that being said, I instinctively help people do that because my passion is to help people win. I love to see people win. That's my passion. And what I observed is that again, like my coach told me, that uh, winning big is a learned behavior. It's an application of a structure that has to be learned and applied to predictably get there and repeatedly do it. And I realized, well, there's kind of the champion's golden rule is you do the homework and the test is easy, meaning that first you prepare and you prepare well. And once you prepared well, then you're ready to start. Your confidence is up, your anxiety is down. And then you perform, and there are certain steps that you go through to anticipate what the experience will be from inception of goal pursuit to achieving it itself. And when we kind of look at that structure and we look at each of the steps that fall within those two different categories, prepare and perform, then we start to take control over our productivity and our results. So a lot of people think, well, I don't like the idea of that because it stifles my creativity. Well, no, it doesn't. It actually allows you to curtail your energy and sets up guardrails where you can be highly efficient in creating a daily productivity that makes you unstoppable. So to me, that's like the essential part. There has to be a mechanism beyond just, I'll just make this up as I go. Well, you can make it up as you go, but it may take 20 years to get to a place you can get in two. If that's the way that you want to do it, I don't suggest that. So, if we learn the structure, and to me, goal achievement is life's primal skill. If we can't do that, then our dreams don't matter because they're never going to get manifested. Our life quality will be compromised and our contribution will be limited as well. And I don't want anybody to get to 70 and say, well, what could have been that won't be now. I wish I had known this in advance. That's kind of my rampage and my pilgrimage.
And it's so important too. And I love how you tie the feeling of accomplishment and the feeling of I've set these goals and I'm going to keep going after them over and over and over again to the own fulfillment within the individual, right? Like
Very much.
you work with people who have already reached what most people would see as the pinnacle, right?
Mhm.
Now, then you come in there and you unlock all these things in them. I think number one, that's a nod to anybody listening to this right now that thinks like, oh, I'm good, right? Like, oh, I've reached it or I've made it, right? There's these people like Tiger Woods and Bono who utilize your services. And when you look at them and go, wow, I can't believe it. What is that like walking in and sitting down and you don't have to get specific because I know there's definitely some privacy there, but what's it like sitting down with somebody like a Tiger Woods and where most people would be like, I've got nothing to teach you, and you become the master in that conversation. What does that look like? And where did you get that confidence?
Yeah, well, thanks. Again, well, number one, if we understand what the process is and we know what a person doesn't know and we see their blind spots, we can't pretend like they don't exist because they all do. And I'll also say that the worst day of a person's life is when they think they've arrived,
Mm.
because that's when they start to rot. And quite honestly, you never reach the finish line. Every decade, you kind of think, well, I should be farther along than I am. How come I don't feel like I'm where I should be? Well, that's just because of how we're hardwired and the way we're supposed to look at it. That's actually a sign that you're living a life as it should be lived. Because, as you get older, like I've got wisdom, I have what a lot of people don't, because I've been in the game playing at the height of the game for the last 70 years. So I can bring my wisdom and help prevent them from tripping over the preventable problems that take most people out of the game, or seize best opportunities predictably, so that the friction has been pulled out to create their greatest legacy with least effort. So, again, sitting down with, whether it's Tiger or Branson or any of these people, it's really understanding what their state of readiness is for what it is that they're aspiring to. And if we
Mm.
kind of know their state of readiness, and at any point in time, every one of us has got a overall comprehensive readiness for pursuing every goal that we're thinking about. But that readiness determines the time, the distance, and the resources to get there. So if we know how to collect that data, then we can make right decisions about what the starting point is. It has nothing to do with what they've previously done, because that's a kind of an archived moment that's been, but what about next? And when we kind of look at next, and we can size it up in terms of two things, and these are the key words here. Number one, synergy, meaning that what are the parts that we need to be here, the fewest number of them, that when optimized together, they create an exponential super capacity. And then the next one is sequencing. Like, in what sequence do we assemble the future? Like, a lot of people just give me the hack. Everybody wants the shortcut or the hack to the finish line. So people carry around the hack bag, right? That's got 1,000 hacks in them. But the secret to this is, in what order do you do the 1,000 hacks? Or do you just throw all the hacks at the wall hoping something's going to stick? Which is what most people do. Everybody wants the hack. I mean, that's a shortcut. That's the nirvana. People take tens of thousands of dollars for the secret hack. The
Hmm.
secret isn't the hack. The secret is the assembly of the fewest things that makes exponential possible. So that's the way that I look at it. And if I know the value and I know where someone is, whether it's a Lance, whether it's some of these other people that I've worked with, it kind of doesn't matter, because the truth informs us what the next step is based upon their readiness. And so that's the way that I look at it. And I know that we never arrive. So I'm never going to presume somebody is ahead of what their questions are. And another thing I'll say about this is that all of these people that we've kind of named, and people that play at that level, they want information. That's the whole reason why we're having a conversation. Because if they knew their own answers, they wouldn't be asking, but they don't. They're smart enough to know, I'm not going to try to figure this out and trip over myself. Let me make sure I understand what the playing field looks like, and let me get some informed guidance on this to make this thing stick right the first time. So
Mm.
that's what it's like. It's
No,
pretty fun, actually.
no, I love it. And I think that's so true, right? Like, some of my clients are people that I admire on so many different levels, but what I help them with, they don't know, and it's a humbling
Correct.
experience to be the person to help them in that way.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting to hear you talk about all these things. And I'm curious your take on greatness, or reaching the pinnacle, so to say. Do you feel like anybody has the ability, or do you feel like a lot of it's predetermined and it's about unlocking what is predetermined for us?
Well, I think you need to unlock it to see what's there, because unless you see what's there, then you're not clear where the gridlock is that's holding a person back. Like, so for example, when I was working with Lance, he sits very crooked on a bike, and everybody wanted to unwind him to make him geometrically like perfect.
Mhm.
And he said, "Well, look, I'm putting everything that I've got into this. I can't put anything more into this." And I said, "Well, that's true, but you're highly compensated. So to try to you're doing everything that you can, but you're being held hostage by a compensation that you don't see, that's become your new normal. If we remove that, then you have access to another 2 or 3%. That at that level is the difference between perpetual winning and why don't you not even show up, watch it on television?"
Yeah.
So, again, unless we test the waters to find out what our limits are, then we don't know what the impediments are. We can't look to see. And if we kind of had, like Sun Tzu said in his book, The Art of War, if you know yourself, you know your enemy, you're not fear the outcome of 100 battles. So if we know ourselves and we know the uh, inhibitions and the roadblocks and the blind spots that we do have, then we can start to extract that and move forward. I think a lot of people everybody has the capacity to perform at their ultimate best. It's a lifetime to get there and stay there. Staying there is a whole different thing than getting there, but we're always morphing. So we kind of do not ever arrive, because every day we're different. We have a new set of guidelines and rules and information that we look at life through different perspectives. So, there is a never ending process of this. And to say that I think a lot of it, because our human nature talks us out of a lot of things. I mean, our human nature is made up of two mentalities. We have the first, and these mentalities are at war with each other 24-hour a day for control of our decision making.
Of
We have
course.
we have our human mindset, which is our hardwired survival biology. And notice what I said here. This is biologically hardwired into our DNA. I didn't say that someone taught this and we were born a blank slate. Somebody put this into us. I didn't say that. I said that we're all hardwired biologically in our DNA to have a survival response that will protect us in times of imminent danger, because the body and mind's highest priority is survival. Well, you cannot create a life of greatness if you're responding to life through survival. But yet, if we have this biology that we can't shut off, that's turned on 24 hours a day, if we identify us with that, then we're screwed, because you're only going to live a life of mediocrity at best. Well, what do you mean, Jeff? Can you give me an example of that? Well, first off, our survival instinct is faster than we can think. Our thinking is too slow. Like, I'm hearing you a quarter of a second after you say it. I'm seeing you a quarter of a second after you say it. That's like you're dead if a car runs a red light in an intersection. In a quarter of a second, if you don't respond, you're dead. And so we do have this high-speed biology that protects us, but it cannot create excellence. Jeff, can you give me an example? Yes. Have you ever said anything to anybody that you thought was going to be really awesome, and it was faster than you could think, and when you said it, you realized it was the stupidest thing that you could have ever said, because now you've ruined a relationship that you may not be able to repair? I mean, how many times have we done that today already?
Exactly.
So there you go.
Story of my life.
There we go. Story of every one of our lives. So it's faster than we can think. We didn't ask for it. It's just part of the human experience. But the good news is that we have a champion's mind. And a champion's mind is a consciousness that in real time can receive, interpret, edit, store, and respond to circumstances. And the champion's mind is the application of historic wisdom that has proven itself to produce a predictable outcome. So if we study what the champions do, they've kind of already told us what the solution is. We just need to apply that to push our high-speed survival reflex into the background. Otherwise, we're going to be a prisoner of that. And let me say something about this, is that I helped a guy win a gold medal by this very thing. I said, well, right now, you believe your human mindset, survival nature, that you need to be perfect to win your gold medal. And so you and your team are looking for all of the details that you think you need to account for to put in the perfect jump to win the long jump gold medal. And you're favored to win the gold medal, and you're currently leading the world championship, which means that you can win this. But you can't win it by the way you're thinking right now, because you're chasing perfection. And your human mindset, because it's fear-based, is always going to tell you that there's another detail that you need to find to win. So you're putting all your confidence in the one thing you can't find, you never will find, because it doesn't exist. Therefore, you've already lost. I said, do what the champions do. They do the one or two things that count. Don't change your warm-up, first 4 steps. Your foot will hit the board, you get the lift, instant gold medal. You're kidding me. 2 things and I win. I said, 2 things. That's all you need to do and you win. That's what history tells us. 2.5 weeks later, gold medal. Then he went on to win the world championship, the European champion, and the Commonwealth Games championship. So my point is here is that the battle that every one of us fights, if we're honest about it, every day, human mindset, champion mindset, human mindset wants to scare us into everything that isn't right and talk us out of everything good. The champion wants to transcend, wants to prevail, wants to create a life of contribution and meaning. This battle is there 24 hours a day, and we need to learn to fight that battle honorably. And I spend a lot of time with my clients talking about this stuff, because unless we know how to step onto the pavement every day with the armor on, and we're not discounting gratitude journals, we're not discounting positive thinking and affirmations. We're not saying that. We're saying that we need to have a state of readiness where we can step onto the pavement, we can engage the stuff of life as it surfaces with confidence and certainty, that we can address anything that shows up fearlessly. And we do that by understanding this battle here. And to me, that's the kind of fundamental starting point for just about everything.
Yeah, that's so powerful. I mean, I love all that. And one thing I've realized with all the conversations I've had, that the greatest coaches and teachers are also the greatest students.
Like,
Um, you
you
know,
never, yeah, totally.
constantly learning and constantly,
Absolutely.
perfecting their craft. So who are some of your mentors? I mean, you talked about your three angels, but as you've gone on in life, who are some of your mentors and some of the people that you go to continue to kind of sharpen your mindset?
Yeah, or my mind, my champion's mind.
Yeah.
The mindset is fixed. It's always there. It's always operational, trying to talk me out of everything good. So, well, yeah, I can certainly say in the healthcare world, for sure, David Minkoff, smartest person on the planet as far as healthcare and wellness go. I mean, for sure. Um, uh, who else do I go to? I have a series of friends that I work with. They're colleagues and collaborators that help me with a variety of different things. In the technology world, I didn't grow up with tech, but I'm a pretty fast learner on things, and so I rely on their expertise, as well. That's a really important thing for me. As far as the artistic side, there are people in the art world. I guess I didn't mention that I was a world-class glass artist at one time as well, that showed my art in the best galleries in New York
Wow.
City. So art and design are like really important, for me. So I have all of them on speed dials. We do regular connection calls every month just to stay connected and till the soil on things that are relevant to both of us, to be able to bring our insights and revelations to each other. And so, even though I'm corner man to many very prolific people, uh, it's really important for me to not make presumptions about what I believe to be true. And I'm always modifying everything by staying in touch and making sure I do my due diligence on what's new, so I can upgrade myself to be able to kind of run at the level that I'm used to running at and be a resource for others.
Yeah, I love that. And I think too, I mean, obviously naming specifics, and I have so many mentors and great people in my life, but I think you can learn from everybody, right? Like,
Yeah, for
so
sure, absolutely. My
over the
daughter,
last,
yeah.
yeah, I was just about to say, over the last 2 years, I've become a bonus dad to my girlfriend's two kids, and I
Oh,
learn
yeah.
more. I learn more from them than I do my mentors, and it's really about learning about myself. And so,
Very much so.
I'd love to hear, and I know you had shared with me before we hit record about you and your daughter, and you adopting her. I'd love to hear more about that and kind of the lessons that you've learned in that process. As now I know parenting is one of the the hardest things
Gotta
on the
be.
planet.
As far as I know, it is the hardest thing. So, when I was at the height of my game, I was 58 at the time, the top of my professional career game for sure. My wife and I were called to consider adoption, which we did everything that had to go right to certify us as who we were, to then pursue an adoption, which we did. We pursued an international adoption. Our choice was Colombia. Um, and so we were paired with a 10-year-old girl, uh, just an amazing, kid. And so we uh, went to Colombia, and you take legal possession of them for 6 weeks. It's like a trial run, kicking the tires on a car, right? And at
Wow.
the end of 6 weeks, and everybody decides, you want to go home empty-handed, or you want to take the child with you. Does the child want to stay home, or does she want to go? And at the end of 6 months, in the 6 weeks, then it was a go for us, just because we had the instinct to do it. And so when we got home, I said to my wife, when we were sitting there with the attorneys and the doctors and everything, and they were revealing to us her medical history and her life history, like two blank pieces of paper. It's like, this is like roulette at the highest level, but yet we had an instinct to do it. And so I said to my wife, look, this is going to be formidable, because she doesn't speak Spanish. She doesn't speak English, and we don't speak Spanish. We have no language here. Like, we had like three vocabulary words in like hungry, sleep,
That's crazy.
and don't talk. There was nothing. They said, we don't have a language. And she's 10 years old, and she's not been to school. I mean, here in America, you're supposed to declare your medical school residency by the time you're 3 months old, and she has not no school, and she's got uh, PTSD and ADHD for getting beat up every day since the age of 4, and physically and mentally abused in every sense of the word that most hideous early developmental environment that you can conceive of. That was her life. I mean, that bends people, man, and
Yeah.
parasitic ridden body, severe malnutrition for 10 years. I said, this is not an average situation here. I said so much so that me, Jeff, I'm going to have to reduce my professional career availability by 90% starting today,
Wow.
which means 90% of our income is going to be gone starting tomorrow morning because we ask her into our world. And we have to deliver on that. And me being an Olympian, I don't play a bronze medal game. Not acceptable. My DNA will not accept that. So we went all in on that. And here we are 12 years later. And I'm just very pleased to say that she graduated from college here this year, and be mindful that nobody from her family ever graduated from elementary school. I mean, like zero, like nothing. And it was difficult. It was brutal. My wife cried every day for 9 years and 10 months. It was so difficult. I mean, it was brutal. And I knew that my daughter did not ask for that behavior, but because of what was thrown on top of her that she did not deserve because of the way people showed up, I just felt that she couldn't be held responsible for that part of it, her behavior. Yes, but I felt that if it was handled correctly, we had a chance to usher her forward. And our task was, and our ambition was to not just save a life, but to produce and enable a potential. That's what we wanted for her. And so what I learned from this, Justin, probably the most important life lessons ever that could be applied everywhere. And if we don't learn these lessons, maybe the other stuff will never be able to manifest it in its full grandeur. But I learned that you can love anybody. You don't need a special reason. Just decide you're going to do it. And you show up and you do it. Is it a one-way street? Yeah, it should be. There should be no contingencies attached to it. It's not like, hey, God, I'll do this if you give me that. No, there's no bartering. No bartering. You show up and you do your job. Whatever it takes to do it, you do it. The other thing I learned is that you have to trust the process, meaning that there are moments in time where your back's against the wall. You have no visibility beyond getting to the end of the day. If you get to the end of the day, then it's been a great day. You absolutely explicitly have to trust the process. And there's something about that, because when you learn to trust the process, you become invincible. And what I mean by that is a lot of us are dependent upon our belief in future based upon what we've amassed in terms of security, bank statement, home, I don't know, teddy bear and in safe deposit box. I mean, who knows what, but we attach ourselves to a lot of things that kind of keep us chained to a dependency where we play a good defensive life that I don't believe serves us well for our capacities. And so when you really realize that all you need is yourself to show up and show up as you and give everything that you've got to give to everybody that they deserve to have, that you want to give them every day, without trying to hold on to something that you think that you may need later when it should be applied today, you trust the process. And there's a certain invincibility that comes along with that. Like, I feel like I could sleep in a cot in the corner of a room for the rest of my life and I'd be happy. As long as I have my freedom in my brain, I can create something of high significance for myself, and for other people. And I also learned that you got to decide how you're going to show up. Probably the most important thing forever, because if we show up being the best that we can be for everybody without any contingencies attached to it, it helps us get beyond our own self-pity. It helps us showcase for other people what's possible, especially in today's world where all you see is lies and backbiting and what's in it for me. You can show them an alternative where there's a living, breathing example of what humanity is capable of. And I would say the most important thing that I learned, I wouldn't discount those other things, but to never withhold the possibility of a miracle. You always have to hold that card close. We had one. But it was hard work that over time manifested a critical mass that enabled us to kind of break the chain of my daughter's history that she didn't ask for. Most important thing that I've ever done. And with those things that I've learned from that, I feel like there's kind of no place that I can't go because of that. I can do pretty much anything to be of service to people and live a life of tranquility of being because of what I've learned through that experience.
There's so there's been so much wisdom in this entire conversation. I mean, you can feel and hear the passion and the wisdom that comes out of you, as you speak and share these stories. And I mean, it's just so true. I mean, gosh, just to show up 100% without
Yep.
expectation. I mean, that
Yep.
that changes the game. That's why,
Game changer.
honestly, that's why you're in the room with the people you're in the room with. Like, that's why I feel like I have the ability to have these conversations, because I approach things very much the same way. And that's the game changing situation, not only for you, but the people you come in contact with. So one thing I
Yep.
like to ask every single person I interview, because I get the opportunity to interview some of the most successful people in the world.
Good for you.
So my question for you, it's a two-parter. The first part is, what's your definition of success? And the second part is, what are 3 things you do every single day to ensure that success for yourself?
Yeah, the definite, probably the manifestation of that, or what are the signs and symptoms that we're successful? You can go to bed, you can get to bed and stay asleep and get up the next day refreshed with abundant enthusiasm and high energy to make a contribution. And you live guilt free. You're tranquil and accepting of self. And you have purpose. And I would say that that's it. If you can get to sleep and stay asleep and get up the next day with enthusiasm, then you're probably doing exactly the right thing.
I love that. It's so true. The staying asleep sometimes can be tough. I realize this as I'm getting older. Like, it's just like, oh.
Yeah, we've all done those 1 or 2 a.m. pacings. What am I going to do next? What do I need to think about? How am I going to do this? We've
Yeah.
all done that. But once we've reconciled that and we've reconciled ourselves to ourselves and ourselves to humanity and ourselves to our journey, you get to sleep and you stay asleep and you get up the next day, ready, willing, and able to be of highest service to people. Well, the things that I do every day, it actually starts the day before. At the end of the workday, I always take a look at, well, what did I get done today that I never need to look at again? That's a kind of a victory ritual for myself. It shows
Yeah.
progress. It confirms that the day was productive. It's a reasonable and honorable scorecard to look at. It's not just a to-do list that you can never get ahead of. You always feel guilty about and always feel anxiety about. You're not making progress. The second list that I make is what are the things that are not finished yet? And do I know exactly what I need to do with them? And if that's the case, well, that's where I'm going to start tomorrow. I'm going to start with those things in a priority that I know exactly what to do. And then there's going to be a third list that I make when I sit down, which is what needs to get finished, and I have no idea what to do next. And so I'm going to leave that aside. I'm going to resist the human temptation to believe that I have to deal with that first, because if I don't unblock that, then I can't move forward. That is a human mindset lie. That is complete mythology. So what I do, I take action on what I know what has to go right with something that I've determined the day before. And I let my subconscious and the ethers sort of work out the solution to the things that I don't know what to do yet. And that way I'm proceeding at maximum pace moving forward. And I still have the rest of the day in the evening to adjust it if I want to. And because I know where I'm going to start tomorrow, I can get to sleep and stay asleep. I don't worry about it. I'm going to get up in the morning. I'm not going to be rushed to try to figure out what I need to do and have scrambled brains to start the day on off balance. I'm not going to do that. That's the way you have a bad day. I'm not going to tempt myself to do that. The other things that I'm going to do is that I'm going to decide which mindset I'm going to come from. I'm going to come from my human nature and live a natural life, which means complaining, whining, excuse making, bad move, make people pay for the life that I don't have that I'd like to have. Not going to do that. I'm going to decide that I'm going to come from my champion's mind. I'm going to show up of service to people. I'm going to honor the opportunity to create a life of productivity, to create and achieve things that represent my commitment to life as I know it. It will also demonstrate to other people it's possible. And in today's world, I think we need examples of that. And then the very last thing I'll do is I'll ask myself, why am I doing this? And so I have 3 pictures in front of me on my desk here. The first picture is of my wife when we got married. I'm doing this for her because she has been faithful to me in every sense of the word, with all of the things that I've wished to pursue that have been offbeat to some, but yet they've worked well for us. The second picture of my daughter with her high school diploma, a great symbol of what's possible if we show up and be of service to others. You can make and work miracles in other people's lives if you remember that. And I don't care where anybody comes from. She came from the worst of the worst. That picture symbolizes what's possible. And I want to get up with the idea of possibility of how I can contribute to others. The last thing I do is that I look at the silhouette of a crowd. And why do I look at that? Because that's the crowd of people that I will interface today in some way, shape, or form. And I've got to decide how I'm going to show up for them. And if I decide I'm going to show up and give them the best that I've got, then I kind of feel like I earn my sleep at night. And whatever my legacy is at the end of the day is I know that I've showed up faithfully to be the person that I can be for them. And I will leave a legacy that could be a case study for others to look at on how they may take some of their cues from life to create a life of passion, purpose, productivity, and also purpose.
Wow.
That's it.
Wow. I love that. I mean, it's just so good. It's so good. I like, there's nothing to add to that, which I love. You know, with that being said, I wrap up every single interview with the same question, but before we get there, how do people get more from you? How do they work with you? What's all the good information?
Yeah, well, thanks for the opportunity to share that. Well, first and foremost, if you'd like to have a conversation, you can go to www.drjeffspencer.com, DRJEFFSPENCER.com, and that'll give you a little bit of a heads up on how all this works. If you're interested in having a private conversation about how we might be able to discuss your future, you can fill out an application. It's not an obligation. It just informs me a little bit about you, and then I will send you a link to schedule a call, which would be terrific. If you'd like to know a little bit more about some of the models that I use that I've crafted over the last 50, 60 years, you can go to beforeyouwin.com, and that's where you'll be able to see some of those models.
Awesome. I love it. And like I said, I wrap up every single interview with this one question. Since the show is called The Growth Now Movement, the question is, in your life, what has been your biggest moment of growth?
For sure. When I was staring at my daughter, when she was on the bed, when we took, possession of her for that 6 weeks trial run, and I saw this little kid asleep on the bed, and I realized that I'm the custodian of this person's future and legacy. It's all up to me. And when I saw that that was the case, it was something that I felt very comfortable with, that gave me a reason to get up each and every day, knowing that I just didn't want to save a life, but I wanted to manifest the potential, which I do for everybody. So that became a moniker that I hold very sacred with me each and every day.
Jeff, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your wisdom with my audience. But more importantly, thank you so much for doing what you do to enhance the lives of so many people, whether it be on a grand scale or the one-on-one scale or whatever the case may be, because people need this stuff and this information was phenomenal. So thank you so much.
Well, it's such a pleasure. And just as a sort of parting remark here or thought, there's only one of us in all of creation. It's just a matter of connecting with our assets and knowing how to build those and grow those so that we can become our own champion, meaning that we're a manifest of our gifts. And if we can do that, I feel, as I told my daughter, that if you turn your back on your gifts, then you're turning your back on why you're here. And I believe that we all have almost like an obligation to craft and tease out the best of us to showcase the gifts that we were given. So thanks again for the privilege, Justin. Just an amazing experience.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for being a part of the Growth Now movement. This is how you can really help me out. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please share it out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that fun stuff. And let's grow this movement to epic heights. And it's all going to be because of you guys. Thank you so much. And we'll see you next week.